Hello guys, you're welcome to this video, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Flutter framework. This video is going to serve as an introductory guide to the Flutter framework. You're going to be learning about how to get started with Flutter. We're going to take a look at installing Flutter and the IDE or text editor we're going to be using. We're also going to be showing you how to work with the Flutter tool on the command line. We're mostly going to be working with the command line. We're not going to use all of the fancy IDE features, primarily because we're not going to be using Visual Studio Code or Android Studio, but you can definitely use that. But let's get back to how we're going to start. So this is the Flutter website. This is flutter.dev. So if you want to check out Flutter, you want to find some information about them, you should definitely check out this website. And so Flutter is a framework, is a popular framework that can be used to build user interfaces. Alright, and not just user interfaces, you can use it to build cross-platform applications that works on pretty much every device. So you can think of Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, Linux, Fuchsia, and a bunch of other platforms are available for Flutter, alright, and it can be ported to work on even newer platforms if you want to. So you can think of Flutter as working almost anywhere, alright, and you can see a bunch of screenshots. These are the kind of apps you can build with Flutter, and you can definitely build even much better apps than this if you put your mind to it. But we're going to be learning about this in subsequent videos. And so you can check out the website. As you can see, the taglines they have here, it says it's fast. There's kind of some truth to this because Flutter, when you build in release mode, is actually fast, right? If you build in debug mode, then debug mode is not as fast, but anyway, of course it's definitely productive because it has this hot reload and hot restart feature. And of course it's definitely flexible, but we're going to take a look at all of this in a minute. And anyway, so this is the Flutter website and you can definitely check it out. And so the next thing I want to talk about is installing Flutter. Alright, so if you click on this get started link here, you should be taken to this install page. Alright, and so this is going to help you set up for whatever operating system you're running on. In this case I'm running on Linux, so I'm just going to click on Linux here, and this is going to open up the page for the Linux installation. And basically you're going to have to follow each and every instruction that is specified here so that you can have Flutter installed. Alright, so once you have Flutter installed, then you should be good to go. Alright, you should definitely do this Flutter pre-catch thing. So once you do this, this is going to catch all the Flutter dependencies, and it's going to make your build time even faster because it's not going to have to download the cache again. But that's not really important. Just make sure that you have followed the instructions to set up all of this. I'm not going to show you how to do it because I feel like you can just read the instructions and follow it. Alright, it's not that hard to just go to the website and follow the instructions. Alright, so and if I decide to show you the the steps to installing Flutter right now, what if these steps or the procedure for installing Flutter changes? Then the video is going to be pretty much outdated, so I'm not going to do that. So my advice for you is to go to this link, or just go over to flutter.dev, click on get started, select your operating system, and then you can follow the instructions and get Flutter installed. Now once you've done that, you're going to need to set up a text editor or an IDE if you want. So in this case we actually have about we have three supported editors or IDEs. We have Android Studio and IntelliJ. We also have Visual Studio Code, and you can also use Emacs if you work on terminal. Alright, I don't use Emacs. I use Visual Studio Code, but in this video I'm not going to be using Visual Studio Code, and I'm most certainly not going to be using Android Studio and IntelliJ. So I'm going to be using the Sublime text editor. Alright, so if you know Sublime text, Sublime text is a really fast, lightweight, really nice text editor. It's kind of like a competitor to Visual Studio Code. and it's got a bunch of features that allow you to actually use it as an IDE, but not a full-fledged IDE most definitely, but it's going to serve our purpose in this video. Now I have a video on my channel that shows you how to set up Flutter for Visual Studio Flutter, that shows you how to set up Flutter for Sublime text. So I will put that link in the description and in the info card box, so you can check that out and follow the instructions to install to install Flutter support for Sublime text. Now the next thing we want to do is, once we have Flutter installed, we can hop over to our terminal right here, and to make sure that our Flutter is installed, you can do Flutter version right here, and if you get some output like this, then it means that Flutter has been installed. Okay, Flutter is installed and you can start working with it. Now the next thing we have to do is to create a new Flutter project. Alright, so I'm going to clear the screen, and to create a Flutter project, the first thing I want you to do when you're working with a CLI tool is to take a look at the help. So we could do something like Flutter -help, and when you hit enter, you're going to wait for it to load, and then you're going to find a bunch of things here. So these are the available commands. As you can see, Flutter Create allows you to create a new Flutter project. Alright, so it's really important that you read a bunch of these instructions so that you can follow the instructions on how to do stuff, and you don't just watch tutorials that show you only a subset of what the tool you're using is capable of, and you don't know how to work with the rest. So make sure that you always read the help. So for Flutter Create, you could also do Flutter Create and then append this with an -help, and when we press enter, you're gonna see that we get this help that gives us some options and things we can create. So here I want to create an Android project because I'm gonna be showing you the examples we're gonna be working with on Android. And by the way, the prerequisite for this is that you must have learned, or you must know, the Dart programming language. So if you don't know the Dart programming language, I have a video on my channel, a Dart crash course, so you should definitely check that out. I'm gonna put the link in the description, and you should definitely check it out right now if you don't already know the Dart programming language. It's quite easy to learn. It's not gonna take you a lot of time to grab and start using. But anyway, let's get back to Flutter. So here we can do Flutter Create, and following the instructions that we have here, you see we have project name, alright, and it says must be a valid Dart package name. So most of the time we don't really specify this, but you can look at all of this and use that to drive how you create your project, and that's what I'm going to do right now. Alright, so we're going to start with the description. So description, and we're going to put that here, Flutter tutorial, just like that. And then we're also going to have organization. Alright, so we're going to put -org, and that is going to be whatever you want to whatever your domain is. Alright, so this is my domain, tech the small under, and so it's going to be in the reverse notation, because if your domain is small under.tech, then you're going to have to reverse it, and that's how we write it. And so we have the project name, so you can specify project name. So for the project name, it says it has to be a valid Dart package name. What that means is that you cannot basically have like my project, for example, so you're gonna have it all lowercase. So for example, in this case, we're gonna see Flutter tutorial. Okay, so it's gonna be Flutter _tutorial. This is one line, by the way. This just wrapped around to the next line. And so I'm not going to be working with iOS, so I'm going to omit this. I'm going to be working with the Android language, so I'm going to put the -a. So you can either use this or you can use this. And I'm going to be working with Java because I don't know, I just don't want to work with Kotlin. So I'm going to say Java, and then we can specify the platforms we want. And so -platforms. And here we're going to specify just we're going to specify Android. right? But we have a bunch of platforms that we can specify here. We have iOS, Android, Windows, Linux, macOS, web. So if, for example, I could decide to specify Android, web, and it's going to create my project for these two platforms, right? So I'm just going to create it for Android and web. And if you want to add iOS, iOS. And if, for example, you created this project and you want to add support for another platform sometime in the future, then you can most certainly just create this entire command again. It's just going to add support for the new platform, right? I hope you understand that. And now the next thing we have to specify is this template, right? So if you do -t, now template is simply like what is the boilerplate they're gonna add to your Flutter project as soon as you start. So it's mostly app by default. As you can see, app is default, so you could omit that. It's not really important, and I'm gonna just say app. And so when you need to specify a directory where you want Flutter to create a project. And I'm just gonna say that you should create a project in Flutter tutorial inside of this Flutter tutorial folder that is going to be located inside of this directory. And you're gonna hit enter, and we should get a bunch of these things that are being created, and it's going to execute this Flutter pub get inside of this Flutter tutorial folder. So what the Flutter pub get does is it's going to fetch and synchronize all our dependencies for Flutter, and then that's gonna be it. Anyway, it's done here, and you can see it says all done. In order to run your application, just type cd to here and then Flutter run. So if I cd to Flutter tutorial, and I could type Flutter run as the advertised. All right, but before we do that, I would like us to open the project inside of our text editor. So if you have Sublime text, then you can most certainly open the project inside of Sublime text. And if you want to use Visual Studio Code, Android Studio, or IntelliJ, you can most certainly do that too. It works. All right, so I'm going to open mine in Sublime text right here, and now I'm going to close the browser because I'm not going to need that right now, and close this one. And so if I open up the folders view here, you're going to see that this is our project structure. All right, so for this project, you can see that this is our Flutter tutorial, which is the root of our project. We have this .2, which is just something that the Flutter tool created. We don't have to worry about it. And the .idea is what Android Studio projects or IntelliJ projects worry about. It's for build tools. And the Android folder is actually what contains our Android source code. So if you've worked on an Android project before, you'll be familiar with what exactly all these are. So the app folder contains like your app, Java or Kotlin specific code, just like a normal Android project. And the Gradle folder, of course, you know what Gradle is. This is just the typical Gradle build system. And we have our lib folder, which is where the Flutter code is going to live. This is where we're going to be doing most of our work. And as you can see, it contains a single main.dart file here. So we know this is a dart file, and dart files always end with the .dart file extension. There is also a test folder here which has widget tests. Now the test folder is where you create tests for your widgets. Now you don't know what widgets are yet, so you don't have to worry, but if you have any tests to create, this is where you're gonna create it. We're not gonna be writing any tests in this video, but you can learn more about that on the Flutter website. Now this is for web. So when you create your project, this is the template that it's going to use to create your web application when it's done. If we're going to be exporting our applications for web, then we're going to be taking a look at this too. And we have this .gitignore file, which just specifies to Git, what to not include inside of your repository. And we have this .metadata file, which I don't even know what it is, but I don't think it's useful. What is it? It says it's used by Flutter, so we don't have to care about it. And the IML file is for Analysis options. I have never used this before, but I think I've seen like, anyway, I don't think this is important, but you know, if you have a problem with analysis, you could check it out. And this one is for IntelliJ, Pubspec.lock. We don't have to worry about it because it is generated by the compiler, but it basically contains like a cache of the packages that has been added as dependencies to your project. Like I said, you don't have to worry about it. We have the pubspec.yaml file. This is another important file that you have to worry about because this is where you're going to be putting all your dependencies and some metadata relating to your project. So you can see a pubspec.yaml file is basically what allows you to specify to Flutter how you want it to configure your project. So for example, you have name here. So this is the name we gave to our project. You can see we have description. So the description we wrote when we did Flutter Create. So the description we wrote when we said a Flutter tutorial was written to our pubspec.yaml. So publish to is simply asking if you want to publish to the pub.dev public repository where you have Flutter packages that can be reused by anybody that wants to use libraries for Flutter. And we also have the version of your project. You can specify version here if you as you go along with your projects. We also have this that we don't need to care about, of course, and then we have this dependencies block, which is another very important part of your project. So as you can see, the first dependency we have here is Flutter, and then there's some properties for the dependency. We also have here Cupertino icons, which is just of course Cupertino icon fonts that you can use in your project. And you can see this is the version. So this is saying that version 1.0.2 or above is going to be what is required for this package. And we also have dev dependencies. These dependencies are just for development and they're never part of the compiled application. I don't really use them that much, so I don't know much about them, but they're useful in a bunch of cases if you're probably working with like code generators and stuff like that. And now these are just some extra properties you can specify for Flutter. So here it says uses material design. So this one's make sure that you add the material icon fonts to your project. It says where is the material design. Now if you want to add assets to your application, you're going to see that this is how you're going to be adding images and stuff like that. We're probably going to do that. We're going to do that in this video. So we're going to see how we add assets to our project, and we can also add fonts like this, but I don't recommend you do this with fonts because there is a Google Fonts package that can help you do this, and it's really easy. You don't have to add any stupid fonts. It's got like thousands of fonts inside of them. Anyway guys, that's the pubspec.yaml, and of course we have a readme.md file that just contains absolute, I don't know, just some generated nonsense that Flutter creates by default. And you can of course change it, or you should change it to something that makes sense for your project. Now we're going to go back to the most important part of this project, which is the main.dart file. Alright, so this is where your code lives. This is where the Flutter code, all of the Flutter code you're going to be writing, this is where it actually lives in the project. So here you can find our main function here, and the main function is the entry point of our program. This is what Flutter is going to look for when it wants to run your program, and then it's going to start. And inside of here we have this run app function. Now where does the run app function come from? It comes from this package we're importing here. That was why I intentionally omitted this here. So the run app actually comes from something that material.dart imports in the project. Right, so this is going to help us run our application, do all the bootstrapping, input, binding, and a bunch of other things like that. It's going to do that, and then it's going to, run this thing we have inside of here. And actually, this is a class instantiation, so we are instantiating this class. Now, if we look at the run app function, you're gonna see that it has this, it says inflate the given widget and attach it to the screen. So these widgets get attached to the screen So what are widgets? Now let's go back a little bit, because with Flutter is actually simple at its core. There are only two things you need to remember when you're working with Flutter, and that is widgets, stateless and stateful widgets. Alright, so widgets are simply, you can think of it as like a UI, or the fundamental component inside of Flutter are just widgets. Alright, widgets are not only UI, however. Alright, some widgets actually just provide you data. They don't actually render any stuff to the screen. And that's why widgets are actually a little bit complicated inside of Flutter. But you can think of widgets as something that lets you build like a tree of UI components. Alright, and the beautiful thing about working with widgets inside of Flutter is that you can actually build you can build complex UIs using composition. So which means you can take some little parts of a UI, build it as a separate entity, and then you can reuse that in multiple different places. And that is basically facilitated by this stateless widgets component. Alright, I call it component because I don't know what to call it. Stateless widget. Anyway, let's get back and say that this is stateless widget. Alright, now stateless widget is exactly as its name specifies. It's a widget that has absolutely no state. Alright, the widget doesn't store any mutable data. So when you hear stateless widget, it doesn't mean that a widget doesn't have data. It means that a widget does not have mutable data. Data that can be changed. That's what mutable data is. So in this case, what this means is that whenever you create this widget, whatever data the widget has when it is created is the same data that the widget is always going to have. So you might wonder, how useful is a stateless widget? Well, a stateless widget is useful in a variety of scenarios. In fact, I would recommend that if you're working with Flutter, you build mostly stateless widgets. Alright, I will explain to you times when stateful widgets are also useful, because we're going to talk about them next. But every stateless widget has this build method that they have to override. Okay, so this build method is what allows you to build, specify exactly what kind of UI component you want to be returned inside of this widget. So as you can see here, we're returning a material app because this is the root of our application. And the material app is also a widget that is provided for us by Flutter. Alright, so if you take a look at this, you're going to see that material app has a lot of arguments. Alright, a lot of named arguments that are definitely optional, of course. So you can specify title, which is just here, you see Flutter demo. You can specify theme and a bunch of other things like that. And what I want to do at this point, because all of this information, if you're new to Flutter, might just look, wow, 115 lines of code. Damn it, that's crazy. But the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to strip out all of these comments just to make sure that we know exactly how many lines of code we're looking at here, because I want to show you guys something. So I'm going to strip out all of these, and then I'm going to run the project so that we can see exactly what this looks like. By the way, these are not comments. These are just hints that is given to you by Dart to say that this is where the app bar opens and this is where it closes. Like I said, if you want to have this kind of support with Sublime text, make sure that you check out my video. I'm going to leave a link in the description so that you can follow along. And yeah, so this is definitely a comment up to here, I guess. Yep, those are comments. Now I'm going to remove all these comments like I said. Now the next thing I want to do is to run this project. Alright, yeah, so now I'm going to run the project, and I could use the terminal that lives inside of here, but I'm going to close this terminal and I'm going to use what is called terminus. You could also install that if you want. I'm going to open the shell in a new tab. So this is the login shell that is embedded inside of Sublime text. It's a package called terminus, and you can install it if you want. So I'm going to do flutter run. But before I run, I want to check the attached devices. So I'm going to do flutter devices, make sure that I have my device attached. And so these are the three devices that it could find. You can see I have my device here, which is ITIL, runs on Android 9, and this is Linux, and this is for Chrome web. So these are the attached devices, and I want to run it on my device here, so I'm going to specify Flutter run the ITIL, and I'm going to hit enter. Now you're going to have to wait for Flutter to run. Now the first time Flutter actually runs your project, it takes some time to run, and if you don't know what the -d is, -d simply says that you want to run, you want to select a device. So -d is like device. You could put like double hyphen and say device, but this is like a short version of it. And so you're gonna wait for Flutter to finish running your project. And I'm gonna pause this video once the project has been run. You're gonna see it on the screen. But I also want to show you, I want to show my screen here, so I'm going to open another tab from my login shell here, and I'm going to say screen copy. So this screen copy is a program that allows me to mirror my screen to the screen here, so you can see it, I guess. And so you're going to wait. Here we go. All right. This is WhatsApp. Shouldn't be looking at this. Alright, so I'm going to need to set this as, what is it called? There we go. Things are going, yes. Let me check. Alright. So that looks like things are going well, and after 415 seconds, Flutter is going to finally install my project. Alright, so it installs it after 35.1 seconds. I'm sure your device is going to be a lot faster. I'm like running on Core 2 dual laptop here, and 4 gigabytes of RAM, so I don't really blame Flutter for being slow on my device. But anyway, so you're going to wait. This is just going to be, for some time. And this is the reason why Flutter is actually good for, all these devices that are kind of low end, because once Flutter builds, then you're going to be able to work, you're just going to be able to work on your project without having to worry about rebuilding after like 10 to 15 minutes again, because that's how I tend to work when I did Android development, native Android development. I had to always rebuild the application, and it's just crazy. And just to show you what I'm trying to say here, if I change this to like red, for example, and I save the program, and I get back here to do my hot reload, you're gonna see that everything changed just like that. In about 5 seconds, we just did a bunch of things that were done here. Now let's just go back to, so what did I just do here? Now you can see I ran my Flutter run, and my project is showing on my mobile device here. So my project is showing on my mobile device here, and as you can see, these are the key commands you can run. So if you hit the the small letter R, you're gonna get hot reload, which simply means that whatever change you make in your project is going to be reflected here. So if you're using something like Visual Studio Code, or you're using like if you're using Visual Studio Code, if you run your project from Visual Studio Code and you save, then you're going to get the hot reload automatically. I don't really like that. I think I prefer to just manually, even when I was using Visual Studio Code, I tend to manually, use the terminal so that I can hot reload whenever I want, so I can make enough changes, come to my terminal, hot reload, and I'm done. Now the hot restart is capital R. Now what hot restart allows you to do is sometimes you might make some changes in your code, in your Dart code, that hot reload is not gonna be able to work. So whenever hot reload doesn't work, it's going to give you an error, and then you're going to have to do just this capital R to do hot restart. Now we could also do H, which is going to give you all the available interactive commands. So if you do H like this, you can see a bunch of things here. So you could save a screenshot using S. You could open Flutter DevTools. And by the way, I don't know if this is actually possible in like Flutter or IntelliJ or Android Studio, but you can definitely do it on the terminal. So you could dump a widget, blah blah blah. You could toggle the widget inspector. You could do this and that. And I think if I hit like let me see. What the hell just happened? All right, yeah. So you can see that now I have toggled the widget inspector, and I can click on a specific widgets to know exactly what it does. What is this? Exactly. So you can see here it says this is a merge semantics. I don't know what the hell merge semantics is, but so this allows you to click around and see what widgets are actually currently on the screen. And I really like this. I've never actually used this before. This is the first time I'm looking at the widget what is it called? Widget inspector thing, but this is really nice. Anyway, I'm gonna remove that because that's not the purpose of this. And so you can take a look at a bunch of other things here. What is this? This is all simulate different operating system. Whoa! So I can switch the operating system to iOS. Anyway, I really need to stop doing this. I'm going to go back. No. I really need to go back to Android. Exactly. This is an Android device, so I'm going to be making sure that I take a look at each and every one of these, but that's not the purpose of this video. Now that we have our project running, let's just go back here. So you can see that the purpose of this program is very simple. It just has its title for the demo homepage, and then you can click here, and the button increases its size and all. So now what I'm gonna do is, because all of this code, as you can see, after I remove the comments, we now have 67 lines of code approximately. But I'm going to do something nice here, and I'm going to delete every single one of this. Now, this is why I said that I really like working with, manually having to do hot reload, because I can make enough changes to my program, and then when I want, I can hit the R to do the hot reload. If you're using like Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ, it would have just, hot reloaded everything, and you get a bunch of errors right now. Anyway, so we're gonna start from the beginning again by creating our main function, just like that. Of course, we have to put void as a return type. I hope you know your Dart, because if you don't know Dart, then you need to go check out my tutorial. Alright, so like I said, the first thing we do is to do run app. Alright, and then we're going to see that we're going to create an instance of my app. Now, run app doesn't exist, so how do we fix that? We can use the code action. If you configured your Sublime text properly, you should be able to hover over this and select code action material. So I have a shortcut that lets me or helps me do it. I think I have covered this in one of my videos, so you can go check them out. And so you have run app. Now, as you can see, we have an error here. My app, doesn't exist. So I'm going to be creating a stateless widget. So run app actually takes a widget as a parameter, as you can see here. So this is going to be our starting point for the application. So I'm going to type STLESS, and you can do the same thing here with Visual Studio Code and Android Studio or IntelliJ. It's still gonna work. So just hit STLESS and hit tab on your keyboard, and this is going to generate the boilerplate code for a stateless widget. Alright, so I'm going to say my app, and the to do, I can return whatever I want here. And now, if I hit R here to do hot reload, you're gonna see that it says hot reload was rejected. So this is what I was trying to tell you. Hot reload was rejected. It says const blah blah blah. Who cares? So it says try performing a hot restart. So anytime hot reload doesn't work and you don't have a compile error, just hit Shift R, which is like capital R, and it's going to perform this hot restart, which is going to restart your application. It's not going to restart your application. It's going to restart like the whole Flutter engine. Right, and so that's gonna take some time, and you're gonna have to wait because my device is kind of slow. But going back here now, you're gonna see this has actually restarted the application, and because we have just a container here as a widget that we're building, so you can see that this is exactly how things work in Flutter. So we have a widget, and we have a widget because this run app actually takes a widget here, and we're returning a stateless widget which extends widget. So as I explained, stateless widgets have no state inside of them, and now we have to return another widget again. So this is how you compose widgets inside of Flutter. And now this container is also a widget, but as you can see, it has absolutely nothing. So if I take a look at the list of arguments, you can see that we can specify some things inside of the parameters. As part of the parameters, I think some of them are missing here. Yeah, so you can see we have like color. So let's change the color to something like red, for example. And this is gonna work, but we're going to start building. So the idea is to actually build the application we saw when we first of all ran this project. Right? So if I do hot reload, you're gonna see that everything has become red. But that's not the purpose of this video once again. So we're going to remove the container. And the first thing we're going to do, so what should always be the starting point for your application is the material app. So the material app is the one that is that is like a base widget for all your material needs. All right. So it provides all the material like canvas, UI, and a bunch of other stuff like that. And it helps you with localization. Trust me, it just has a lot of things that you're gonna need to work in your Flutter application. So material app should be your starting point. All right. Now it has a lot of things. If you hover over it, you're gonna see that it has a bunch of arguments. Actually, a lot of them. Right. But the most important, you can see we have theme, we have dark theme, we have a bunch of things like that. We have the home widget here, which is what we're going to be taking a look at in this video. So home is going to be where the application, what is going to be displayed by the material app. And so home, we're going to see my home page, just like that. Now my home page doesn't exist yet, all right? But we're gonna create that in a minute, all right? So we're gonna go stateless, and then we're gonna do my home page, just P is capital, and here we're going to return. We're gonna leave it as a container for now. As you can see, the error goes away, but we have some warning here which just says we should use key widget constructors, whatever. So we're going to create a constructor from my home page, get a key. Key is just something that is passed around inside of Flutter. I don't think you're going to learn about keys in this video, but in subsequent videos when we start talking a little bit more about Flutter widgets, you're going to see the value of keys and how useful they can be. So you see this is an identifier for widgets, all right? So basically you can use it to take stuff in and out of widgets, but we're going to take a look at that more in depth. So this is exactly what I was looking for, and there we go. So I want to do the same thing here. Get a key so that I can make this const, and now I could also make this const. Right. Anyway, so that's all for right now. And now if I run this again, you're gonna see that it's just gonna go back to being black mostly. Yeah, there we go. Because now my material app is the parent, but I just have my home page which returns the container again. So here we could use what is called a scaffold. So a scaffold is like a material widget that just helps you, that creates or allows you to arrange some of your components in kind of a nice way. You can build like an entire app using just scaffold with its components inside of them. So for example, it has this app bar property where you can have like an app bar like this. And inside of the app bar, you could have a title, and the title property also takes in a widget. All right, so we're gonna have the text. I'm going to be explaining all these widgets as we go, so don't worry about them. But here we're going to have a text widget, which is going to say Flutter demo application or something. I can't remember what exactly the title of the application was before, but it's fine. Then we're going to have body. So the body is like the body of the scaffold. All right. So this app bar is just something that extends, like at the top of the application, and then the body is what fills the rest of the space inside of the application. So for the body, we could just put like a container again, and this time we're gonna make the colors the blue, for example. Now, if I save the application now, you're gonna see that this is gonna, okay, we have an error here. Let's go check it out. Where the hell is the error? Oh, there's no error. So I'm gonna run this again. And there we go. So you can see that this actually looks really ugly. I'm just gonna use something like, I don't know. What colors do we have here? Let's just check out a bunch of colors. I'm gonna use pink, just to make sure that the app bar looks different from the, there we go. Now, I forgot to mention something about the material app, in that the material app actually allows you to, control your entire application's theme, all right? So it allows you to control your entire app's application theme. So for example, I could do something like theme here, and then I could specify like theme data, and then inside my theme data, I can specify like brightness. So the brightness is how you specify if it's going to be the light or dark theme. So brightness.dark actually specifies that your application wants to use a dark theme. Yeah, so we have to remove the constant here because that wasn't a constant constructor. Anyway, so brightness.dark simply specifies that you want a dark theme for your application, and if I refresh this, you're going to see that now this is going to be dark. And if I remove this continuous color, for example, just to make sure that you get the point, you're going to see that now everything's dark. But if I set the brightness to light, for example, then you're going to see that if you refresh again, you're going to see light. So that's exactly how we work with theme inside of Flutter, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth on that sometime in the future. So as you can see, just by writing this little piece of code, we have actually almost created exactly what we could find inside of the other application, but we're not quite done yet. All right. So now we have to specify. We had a text that says click whatever, and then we have the actual number showing here. So what we could do with that, we need something that actually can display two values in the middle. So we're going to need a center widget, and that center is going to have like a child, and the child is going to be a colon widget, which is going to have children, which is going to be a list of widgets. I hope you're following with this. So this is going to have children, which is going to be a list of widgets, and here, if I did this right, there we go. So the children for this widget is going to be, now we're going to have text. So like two texts basically, this and this one. What is this? Right. And for this one, we're going to have something like enter the, you just click on the button to increment counter. And we're going to put something like 0 here. And if we reload the application again, you're going to see that we now have this here, just like that in the center. But that's not how the application looked in the example we saw. So we could set some other parameters like main axis alignment, and we could do that center, for example. And now go back here and do hard reload again, and now you're gonna find that this is actually looking a little more like what we saw earlier. We could set some other properties for our style, like text style, or we could use the theme and get the text theme so that we can, specify like the type of text, the style of text we want. And of course, you're gonna see now that this is going to become bigger. So it depends on the style you want to give to your applications, and you don't have to worry about how all of these things work, or what kind of, this is going to be automatically taken care for you by the material app. So if you didn't have your material app, then you're probably not going to be able to do all of this. But once you have material app, then this is going to work. Right? Like this property is coming directly from this theme data that we specified here, right? So if I say theme.off, it simply means that I'm trying to get the theme data for my application, and then I want to know what the text theme is, and the value, which is the style for this kind of text style, subtitle 1, and I want to use that to style this text. That's basically what that means, right? And I could also do the same for the second text. If I can copy this and just put a comma there, and here we could do something like caption, I guess, depending on how. And we could also specify font size and a bunch of other things like that. Depends on how we want it. I'm just gonna leave it as subtitle 2, and now that's it. Now the last thing we want to specify is the floating action button. So we're going to come down here. As you can see, this is the body of the scaffold, right from the beginning to the end, center, and this is where the center ends. So we want to specify the floating action button. So the floating action button is the button that it lives right here or here, it doesn't matter, but it just floats in your application. And so this is what Scaffold allows you to do. It allows you to create a floating action button that actually does that. Now, floating action button is actually going to be a widget, so you can pass any value you want as a floating action button, but you typically want to use a floating action button like this. And so this floating action button allows you to do a bunch of things, but it also needs a child. So the child is typically like a text or an icon, and here I'm going to do like a plus, or we can use an icon like I said, and there's also an icon widget, which is going to be icons.add down there, for example, and then we're going to have unpressed. And so what the unpressed is going to allow you to do is whenever this button is clicked, it's going to allow you to perform some sort of operation on this. So if you refresh this now, you're going to get the floating action button showing up here. Now, can you see the process of how you create applications iteratively in Flutter? So in just about 50 lines of code, we've almost replicated exactly what they had in the original. Now, there's a reason why this is not going to work, and we can actually make it work right now by converting the stateless widget to a stateful widget. Because remember what I said earlier, that a stateless widget cannot contain any state, which means that we cannot store any data inside of a stateless widget, but we can do that for a stateful widget. Now, we can convert this to a stateful widget by using the hints, alright, so convert to stateful widget. You can also hover over this, choose code action, and convert to stateful widget. You can do this in Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ too, by the way. So now you can see that this is actually now split into two classes, stateful widget, and then we have the state. So this stateful widget is just a widget that creates this state class that we create here. And now the state class also extends the state kind of superclass. So basically what this lets us do is to create add state inside of this class that is going to be used in our stateful widget. But let's take a look at exactly how that works. So I'm going to be creating an int, and then I'm going to call it counter, and then I'm going to set it to 0, right? So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to use the counter inside of here. If you do not know about string interpolation in Dart, please check out my Dart video. You're going to learn about it. And so this is not the correct variable name. There's an underscore in front of it. Okay, so that should work. Counter. There we go. So now when we press a button, what I want to happen is I want my application to reload the value, to refresh itself and update this kind of variable. And to do that, we're going to use what is called set state. So what this set state function is provided to us by this state that we're extending, the state class that we're extending. So that's why we get the set state. And what the set state is going to do is it's going to tell Flutter to reload this function and call this build method again. And when it calls this build method, all of these values are going to be reinitialized, and the kind of variable is going to be, passed to the text, which is going to be changed automatically. I think I should just use this one here. I don't know. So that the text is actually more visible. Headline 6. There we go. And so now when we say set state, so the set state actually takes a function of whatever computation you want to do before the state gets set. So what we can do inside of there now is we could add a value to this counter by doing counter ++. And if we do hot reload now, you're gonna see that nothing changes. It just says reloaded one of blah 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 libraries. And if I hit the plus button now, you're gonna see that it has changed. And now every time I click on the button, you can now see that the value changes just like we had in the previous video. So the next thing I want to show you is another example that shows you just how powerful Flutter can be. And we're going to create an infinitely scrolling list of items. Alright, this is really crazy. I know it must sound like something really difficult, but I'm going to show you how easy it actually is by recreating this home page. It's my home page as a stateless widget. So we're going to do stateless, my home page. And here we're going to put a scaffold again, and we're going to have an app bar. There we go. So app bar, and we're gonna put a title there, put in the text inside of here. So we're gonna name the app my app, whatever. And now inside of our body, we want to pass a value to so we want to create a list, a scrollable list of items, a list that scrolls infinitely. All right. In other UI frameworks, this might be something that is a little difficult to achieve, but in Flutter, this is really easy. And to do this, we use what is called a list view. All right. So we do list view.builder, and we have this item builder property. All right, which takes a function. The item builder is actually a function that takes a build context and index. Now, the build context is a little bit like something that stores state for the entire Flutter application. All right, so the context is a little bit weird because I don't really understand how exactly it works in general, but I think it's like storing information about the current widget and stuff like that. So inside of this builder now, what we're going to return is a widget. All right. So there's also a widget called list style, and this list style widget is what we're going to be returning here. Now we're going to say what do we have here. So the list style has a title. All right. So the title also takes in a widget. So as you can see, you can now have a feel for the composable, how composable Flutter can be, where you just have widgets that takes in other widgets, that takes in other widgets, and takes in other widgets until, of course, everything bottoms out and then the UI is rendered as you might expect. Of course, there is limit to everything because if you keep building widgets out of widgets, then you might run out of memory. But writing UI code like this allows for a lot of flexibility and reusability. And of course, composability. Anyway, so for the title, I'm gonna say text. I'm gonna say item index. I'm also gonna do on tab so that if we want to show that this text was tabbed or something. Okay, this cannot be const because I have a non-const expression inside of there, and we could also have something like leading, for example, where we're gonna do icon. This can be const. Let's see, account roles under, I think we have like an account box inside of, and these are material icons that comes with Flutter, by the way. So some of these icons that you're going to be seeing in this video actually come with Flutter. You don't have to do anything. All right, we have to make this work. So we have the key parameter here. Of course, we have to specify like the super class. So super key. If I can type key, anyway, there we go. All right, so this error goes away, and now here we have item index. This is not an error. Anyway, so I think that is pretty much it. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating an infinitely scrolling list, but I don't think you understand what I'm doing here. So I'm just gonna hit the R key, and you can see we have an error here. All right. So what exactly is it called? I can't remember. I think it's account. Anyway, I think audio track. I can't remember like the name for the icon that I was looking for, but I knew that there was an audio track icon. Alright, so you can reload that again, and if you wait for the hot reload to continue, now you're gonna see that just like that, we now have like a scrollable list that of course does exactly as we want. Now if you scroll, what is this? If you scroll like, and there's a bug with Flutter, by the way. If you're trying to scroll with your mouse, this is how it's just gonna be looking like a curve. But if you actually scroll, so you can see that this is actually a list that scrolls infinitely, because we don't actually know how many items are going to be inside of this list. And as you can see, this is performant. Why is this performant? Is because we didn't even specify the Flutter exactly, like it doesn't have to load anything inside of the cache, and everything is being generated dynamically. All right, so as you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm creating a list style every time this item builder function is called, and then that's when I dynamically generate this item. And so Flutter can create as many infinitely scrolling items as we want without actually using any amount of memory, or without actually crashing out like Android does when you create very huge items. Of course, I think Iteratively mitigates that, but anyway. So, and of course you can click, you can see, and if you want to add divider, I think there's like a list view or divide, like divider or whatever. I think it's separated. Let's see, what do we have here? So we have the separated, and then so we have the separator builder. All right, so separator builder is how you can build like a separator builder. And if you use the divider widget, the divider widget actually comes with Flutter. So it's a built-in widget that comes with Flutter, and we now have to specify item count. So item count simply is like how many items you want to have inside. So we could have like 100, for example. And because we're building everything dynamically, this should still work as you might expect. And now if you reload this, you're gonna see now that we now have everything from 0 to 99 as you might expect. And as you can see, the separator shows up, right? So the separator is how things are separated between the widgets, and yeah. So I believe that is all you need to know about stateful and stateless widgets. So the difference between stateful and stateless widgets is that stateless widgets does not have any state, and stateful widgets have state. And with stateful widgets, you can call set state to reload or rebuild a widget. And I think that's pretty much it for the introduction to Flutter. And in the next video, I would like to take a look at a bunch of widgets, basically all of the widgets that Flutter provides. And yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. I hope you learned something, and make sure you leave a like and subscribe. If you want to watch more of my videos, turn on the notification. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye.